Hello and welcome to another episode of the Empowering Leaders podcast. At Aleda, we are passionate about inspiring connections and creating a world of collaboration. Our signature program, Aleda Connect, curates groups of 5 to 6 leaders from diverse backgrounds in sport, industry, social venture and the arts who come together to learn, to connect and to collaborate.
It's been amazing. Here you are on this Zoom call, feeling within the first session like you intimately know these people and care for them. And then all of a sudden realizing that even though you're in totally different industries, we're all going through the same thing, or we've been through it and we can help each other, or there's just this hurdle that you can't see past. And then you share it with the group and there's 5 answers in 40 minutes and you think, I have not slept for 2 weeks thinking about that. Like, how is this possible?
So you're listening to stories and the breadcrumbs of what makes success, and I constantly get something out of these Zoom calls and catch-ups because we're all living the same stuff, aren't we?
Extraordinary people with extraordinary experience. What happens there is magical.
The Empowering Leaders podcast is proudly brought to you by Victoria University, where cutting-edge sports and exercise science facilities like heat chambers, performance labs, and altitude environments mean VU is ranked 7th in the world for sports science. VU, uniquely you. As always, a big thank you to Jason Nicholas and his team at Temper Bedding, a mattress like no other. If you enjoy listening to the Empowering Leaders podcast, be sure to subscribe, and please, if you have a moment, we would love you to leave a review so we can reach more listeners and empower more leaders. Welcome to the Empowering Leaders podcast. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce a guest who is reshaping both tech and sport. Adam Driussi is the co-founder and CEO of Quantium and currently chairman of the Canterbury Bulldogs in the NRL. Adam co-founded Quantium back in 2002, and over more than 20 years, he's built it into a powerhouse in data science and artificial intelligence. Under his leadership, Quantium now operates globally, working with clients like US giant Walmart, Telstra, and the Commonwealth Bank, and is delivering cutting-edge AI solutions across sectors like retail, health, and finance. But Adam doesn't just lead in business. As chairman of the Canterbury Bulldogs since February 2024, he's bringing the same strategic, data-informed mindset to one of Australia's most storied NRL clubs. He's been part of a broader cultural shift at the Bulldogs, strengthening their commercial foundations, investing in pathways, and expanding their community impact. Someone once said of Adam, his ability to harness data doesn't just inform decisions, it transforms how organisations think about their future. Whether he's speaking about business, community or elite sport, his leadership combines clarity, innovation and clear strategic thinking. Adam, thanks for joining me today, mate. I know our audience are going to absolutely love this conversation. Appreciate you spending the time.
No problems. Thanks, Luke. And thanks for that introduction. It was a bit longer than I'm comfortable with. I don't know where you got that quote, but it's good to be here.
Adam, I want to start with what your day job is at Quantium. It's become one of the most respected AI and data science companies in the world. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us what excites you the most about leading in this new AI-powered world?
What excites me the most? I mean, the technology just changes every day. So it's a very stimulating sector to work in, where you can have been doing something for 30 years and every day the technology keeps changing. And it's never changed as much in my career as right now. So it's a real challenge to be thinking about how the technology is going to keep moving and what that means for business, how we run our own business, how we help our clients. So it's very intellectually stimulating. It's amazing to be able to see the things that people can achieve now as well. So to kind of play a part in pushing people to use the technology to do new things, it's pretty cool. It keeps me awake at night in a good way.
You just spoke about the incredible power that AI is delivering. And as I said in the intro, you're at the cutting edge of that and doing remarkable things, which I want to get to. But can I ask you this question? How are you balancing the fast-paced innovation and opportunity with some real ethical dilemmas that are being raised at the moment?
To be honest, we've done that for a long time. So I think anytime you're using data and AI and technology, you need to be careful about how you do that. So we've always had a very strong ethical view at Quantium that we use data to make a better world. And so, as an example, we wouldn't help a cigarette company use data to get people to smoke more, for example. We don't use data to get people to gamble more, even though, I don't mind a pun on the weekend like a lot of people. So we've always been very careful about how we use data. And I think we can actually play a role in helping our clients understand how to use data, how to use AI and so on to be ethical. So how do you build models and how do you do things to make sure that they're transparent? And in particular, they don't have biases and so on against certain segments of customers. And so we can play a leading role in actually helping people with that stuff.
And on the OpenAI front, just to sort of drill into that a little bit more, I mean, obviously there's some efficiencies going on where I was listening to a story fresh back from our London conference where an organisation might have a couple of thousand in-house legal with AI and tech that might be reduced to a headcount of 20. So the efficiencies are enormous, but the job losses are potentially catastrophic as well. Is that part of the guardrails we've got to think about as we get more efficient too?
Look, I think that's a tough one, Luke. I think I get it. First of all, I think 2020 is pretty ambitious and probably a bit overstated, I think, or very overstated. But any technology, like if you look in the history of time, technology always, first of all, probably results in some job displacement, but also creates entirely new types of jobs and so on. So, the type of work that I do that didn't really exist 30 years ago. So there's an entire industry around all sorts of stuff to do with AI and data and technology and so on. If you drive across the Harbour Bridge in Sydney, you used to pay someone toll with coins. These days, we don't really. I haven't carried a coin in my wallet since COVID, and I certainly haven't paid anyone at a toll booth. So I think technology changes are ongoing. I think if we don't adapt to that, the problem is other countries in the world and other businesses that do, they will adapt, and suddenly you just see businesses fold. So you just become what Kodak has been in the camera industry. So I think it forces us to adapt and change. Now, that can be very challenging for some people because for some individuals that will create enormous opportunities in terms of new types of jobs and be really stimulating. And I think it's going to be challenging for some where they can't adapt and it might mean that their job is at risk and maybe they can't reskill in the way that others can. And that's going to be a real challenge for society. Now, I can't solve that as Quantium, but there's sorts of conversations we have with leaders. But I think ultimately just saying, we need to protect all of those jobs at any cost. The problem is the companies that do that, they may not survive. So there's going to be a really challenging kind of economical and societal issue over the next few years, I think.
Yeah, fascinating insight that you've got into that balance, isn't it? It's disruption, perhaps like we've never ever seen before, but you're either going to survive and thrive or, where are those guardrails as we suggest. I want to go into your sporting hat for a moment, Adam, and I know, fresh from an amazing season and still alive, the Bulldogs. But how do you think about applying your AI and data skills to improve the culture and performance of an elite sporting environment like you are as chairman of the Bulldogs?
I think of it like I do any other business or any client of ours, or how I think about Quantium, which is I think about AI being able to support with everything that you do. So my leadership message at Quantium around AI is that we're all in on AI. And by that, I mean, I want every single person in our organisation to default to thinking about how do I use AI to help me with what I've got to do right now. So every task, every person, every day. So it's not that dissimilar at the Bulldogs. I want everyone at the Bulldogs defaulting to think about how they can use AI to do whatever they are about to do better. Now, probably there are some exceptions at the Bulldogs. So the players on the field, they don't have the luxury of pausing at a point in the game and saying, what would AI do here? Of course not. So that's a bit different there. But certainly our coaches, our marketing team, our CEO, our CFO, our community team, our membership teams, all those sorts of things, all of them can be using AI to think about how we do everything we do better, whether it's game day, whether it's marketing, whether it's how we run the business strategy, the lot.
So Adam, it's a 1,200 plus person business that you run day to day and clearly an amazing success, and you've been ahead of the curve in so many ways. Do you have a different leadership style when you put on the chairman of a sporting club, or do you feel like it just correlates your day job to the sporting role as well?
Look, I think my style's similar. Like I think my style tends to be very authentic. So I don't, I'm just myself, and so sometimes that means I tend to be very transparent. Like I say, I am authentic with my messaging, and so I think that's the only way I know how to lead, and I think it's the only way I like being led by other people as well. So I'm authentic in both organisations. I think the difference is in a bigger company with 1,200 people, I have teams of people that would do certain things that maybe at the Bulldogs we have much smaller resource for. So pick something like people and culture. At Quantium, I'd have a people and culture team with about 50 people in there. So our head of people and culture reports to me, but she's got an entire team of 50 under her. Whereas at the Bulldogs, we've got one person in people and culture and some people in welfare as well. So it's very different how you're thinking about a topic like people and culture. I need to be careful that I don't come into the Bulldogs and start expecting standards that I might have at Quantium. But equally, there's some things that we do at the Bulldogs in a professional sporting organisation which are a lot more advanced than at Quantium. So, for example, media, the Bulldogs deals with the media every day, and at Quantium we tend to be, have a lot less conversation with the journalists. So I don't have journalists calling me every day at the Bulldog at Quantium, but I do at the Bulldogs. So, yeah.
And for those listening that are leading their particular space and whatever that might be, feel a bit intimidated or overwhelmed by this fast-paced change of what AI means, what advice would you give them?
My advice would be to get in and have a go. I think the beauty of AI is that unlike other technologies, like a lot of technologies, it can often feel like it's a young person's game, and if you haven't grown up on the tech, then you're behind. And certain types of technology in what we do at Quantium over the years have been a bit like that. So if you couldn't code in Python, then you couldn't really build a artificial intelligence model. That's the reality. So that would be intimidating to people who don't know how to code. Whereas AI, it's very simple to use. If you log into something like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it might be, there's a simple taskbar, a bit similar to Google, how we've all got used to using Google. And it's as simple as asking a question and then when you get an answer, interrogating the answer and saying, actually, that sounds right or that doesn't sound right, or I want more detail on that or less detail. And so what I say to a lot of senior leaders is that a lot of the skills that got you there are actually the skills that should make you good at using AI. You know how to ask good questions, you know how to give good briefs to teams, you know how to challenge answers as to whether they're right or wrong. And you don't need to be able to code. In fact, the AI tools can code for you. So I think the barriers to entry of using the tech are very low. Now, that doesn't mean to say you can't have people who are expert at it and better at it and so on, but I don't think there's any reason why most people can't have a go and start using that sort of technology. And that's certainly what we're seeing at Quantium and at the Bulldogs and with a lot of our other clients.
Can you give us a bit of an insight, Adam? I know this is your absolute expertise at a high level. What does your daily work life look like with AI now, and how are you using it on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I use it for everything. So I literally do all of my planning in Claude. I use Claude as a tool I typically use, but it's similar to ChatGPT if you use that. But if I was thinking about a strategic question, I would be using Claude to challenge my thinking in that. I'd be saying, this is what I'm thinking, what might I have missed? What else could I be thinking of on this topic? Challenge me, etc. So I would use the AI there as like a strategic thought partner. If I was preparing for a tough conversation with someone and trying to think about how do I land that message well, this is what I want to get across, but I'm wary of A, B, and C, I would use Claude to kind of, again, coach me through that. So I use Claude a lot as a coach. And sometimes as a CEO and a chairman, you can have a lot of people around you that just agree with you. And as much as you might want to encourage them to challenge you on things, it can be tough. So I use Claude a lot for that. I use Claude to research things. So if I want to understand a topic in more detail, I would use AI to do that. Whereas previously, maybe I would have asked someone to go and look at that for me. I would use AI. So I literally use it for everything that I do. So it's a bit like if I said to you, how do you use the internet? You probably think, oh, what do you mean I use it for everything? I can't remember. It's not like I use it for one thing. And it's a bit like that with AI for me and for, certainly now a lot of people at Quantium and at the Bulldogs as well.
It just blows me away, the pace of change on that, isn't it? For me personally, I don't use Google almost at all anymore, and that was a daily usage. And ChatGPT is, as you said, becomes such a part of your ingrained daily routine. It's fascinating. You've shared some stories before about examples of how it's benefited your team and your colleagues. Can you give us a story of how you've been able to use that effectively within the teams that you lead?
Sure. And maybe a few examples at Quantium, first of all. So I think one of the interesting things about kind of launching with a message of the default, you try to change the default of the way people work. So it wasn't about us saying, right, we want to transform A. It It was more that we wanted to transform the way that people thought about how they do their work. So there were some obvious things that we knew in doing that would change the way we work. So, for example, our engineers, when they write code, we knew that with that sort of messaging, what we were trying to get them to do is use AI to write a lot of the code that they write. So AI tools can write code incredibly well. So if you're an engineer not using AI tools to write code, you are suddenly going to produce a lot less than someone with the same skill set who also use AI. So it's really kind of becomes compulsory as a way of working for coders to be able to do that. But then there were some other things that came up that we didn't anticipate. So I'll give you an example. Our network went down one day at Quantium, which is a pretty rare thing, but all of a sudden, no one at work could work. All our systems were down, our email was down, our internet was down, basically. So that's a very costly thing for our business because no one's able to function properly. Now, we paid an external company about $1 million a year to give us 24-hour tech support on that sort of thing going wrong. So our network engineer in that situation, he took what's they're called log files, which was of what went wrong with our network. He sent those log files to this company to say, here's the problem. Now they responded back. I think they responded back maybe 4 hours later to say, we're onto it. We'll get back to you within 24 hours. Now, thankfully, that same engineer thought, well, I've done that. Now I'm actually going to, why don't I throw it into Claude and see if Claude can solve this? Now, I should say, I've gone and looked at the log files after this. These log files aren't things that human beings can read. They're in like computer gibberish. There's like something like 200 pages of computer gibberish to read, but AI could read it, and AI basically immediately said, try this patch. Our network engineer did that, and we had our network back up and running within half an hour. And 24 hours later, the company that we paid $1 million a year for that service got back to us with pretty much the same patch. So it was just a real example for me of thinking, well, at the time of saying I want everyone to default AI, I never would have dreamt of that use case. But in that moment, it was really, really valuable. And obviously going forward, it makes us think about, well, what do we want our support to look like going forward in that area? Do we need to spend $1 million a year on that service anymore? Or is this the right way for us to solve things in the future? So that's an example at Quantium. At the Bulldogs, maybe it's a completely different sort of example, like just thinking about things like our game day experience. How can we enhance our game day experience? We had a lot of ideas. We really wanted to elevate the experience for fans this year. We started the season well, and we wanted to get high crowds, and we've managed to do that very well. But myself and the CEO in particular, we've just used a lot just to keep challenging us and coming up with new ideas as to how can we almost bring like a college football or an NFL experience to an NRL game and this sort of stuff. We're a completely different one. I'll give another one, which is quite funny actually, which was we wanted to improve the look and feel of our ground, because we train out of Belmore Sports Ground, so it's our kind of spiritual home ground. But to be honest, if you drove into Belmore Sports Ground, it just looked tattered. It hadn't been invested in for a long, long time, the kind of exterior of the ground. So there was signs there that looked like they were there from the mid-1980s. And our coach, Cameron Serraldo, said to myself and the CEO, he said, look, I'm asking these players to come in every day and to train like high-performance athletes. And as they drive in every morning, this doesn't look like a high-performance facility, which is very fair. So at the same time, we didn't have a lot of money to spend on a new high-performance kind of entry to that ground, because we're separately building a new facility which will be ready in 18 months. So we use AI. We took a lot of photos of the kind of all around the ground and just asked for as many suggestions as we could get as to how we could improve the look and feel and the experience without spending too much money. And it was quite mind-blowing what it came back with, actually.
Amazing stories, isn't it, of the detail and the practical use that is happening day to day with an organisation that is using it the way that you are. Thanks for sharing that. I often think about leadership and values being intrinsically linked at them and not able to separate them, and great organisations understand their values. Is that something that's challenging with AI-driven decisions? How do you make sure that human ethics are aligned with values in this AI space?
I don't think it's difficult, but maybe some other people might. I don't know. But I don't think AI replaces the need for humans to be taking responsibility for what they do. In fact, it definitely doesn't. So We have a very strong kind of leadership position at Quantium and at the Bulldogs that if we're using AI, it's to help us be more efficient and help us do something better. It's not to replace the thinking. If all someone does is just run a simple query in AI and then send the outputs to somebody without thinking about it, then that sort of thing is not really adding value from a human point of view. So I would say we're still making all of our decisions using the same values that you've got. In fact, actually what AI can enable you to do is kind of hardwire in those values and those ethics and those guardrails and all sorts of things into your decision-making so that you are making those decisions at your best and you're never forgetting those guardrails, if that makes sense. So for me, with AI, as an example, I've built what I call a digital twin of myself. So that means in AI, I've built out my writing style in detail. I've built out my leadership beliefs in detail. I have all the values of Quantium and the Bulldogs kind of all loaded into AI systems when I use them, so that as I'm asking it to challenge me on things and to think about things, it always knows to remember the things I believe as a leader, and it knows to remember the values of Quantium and the culture of Quantium, and separately the values and culture of the Bulldogs. And so in that way, I think it actually it's a tool to help me work at my best all the time, not get lazy and not think about things like values.
We all are born different. As we grow, the experiences we have develop into outlooks uniquely our own, charting our life's course. No one sees an idea, opinion, or opportunity like you. And no one sees you like VU. Victoria University. Uniquely you.
At Aleda, our signature program, Aleda Connect, is something we're really passionate and proud of. We bring together groups of 5 to 6 people around the globe from diverse backgrounds, sport, industry, social venture and the arts. We come together to learn, to connect and to collaborate.
The thing that I've loved about it is not just the meetings that we have with our group, it's the thinking that you do for days and days afterwards. Someone says something and it sparks a thought, and I found that I would go back and look at things that I was doing in a different light. Within my sport and within women's sport, I'm just someone who I try to lead by keeping people talking about the issues. There's times when I think the person I'm trying to convince is not listening to me. It actually got me thinking about, okay, this is how I need to address my communication with them. So it was so valuable, and the little group that we've got is great, and I'm really looking forward to sort of continuing to connect with them into the future because we're all so very different. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it.
Adam, you're working with some of the world's biggest companies, as I mentioned in the introduction before. What have you learned about how these big global organisations are using AI, and what lessons can you share?
A few things. First of all, it's not easy in a big company. I think when you've got a big company, it can take a long time to transform things. It's one thing if you've got a team of 50 and say, let's all use AI, and you can sit around and almost share with each other how to do that. If you've got a very big business, say you're like a Woolies and you've got 150,000 staff or whatever the number is today, that's a very different proposition, and you're going to have a very different mix of skill sets, job types, all that sort of stuff. So the rollout becomes very challenging. You have a lot of different responsibilities. You might have union agreements. You might have all sorts of stuff that gets in the way. And you also have a lot of legacy systems that make it challenging as well. So again, a startup can build everything to be AI native from day one, whereas existing businesses don't necessarily have that luxury. So that can be a real challenge. We're fortunate that the companies we work with are again wanting to use AI for good. So most of them are thinking about, yes, they'll need to think about, are we delivering what we do as efficiently as we can? But a lot of them are also wanting to think about, how can we improve our business? How can we grow our business using AI to kind of help push our thinking and idea generation and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's very, very challenging though in a big company to kind of culturally change quickly.
So looking ahead, Adam, what role do you see AI playing in shaping not just business performance, but society and even overall well-being in general into the future?
Oh, gee, that's a tough question. I mean, I think I've got to be careful when I answer questions like this. I don't sound like it's just, I think the answer to everything is AI, but I get you're asking me about what role AI can play in these sorts of things. But I just do want to preface it by saying that human interaction is still very important. Like I said before, I think there's almost nothing that you couldn't use AI to help with. So I know for myself and with friends, there's been moments where they might have had a family crisis. They're trying to work out how to deal with something in a really tough moment. And sometimes it could be that AI is a tool to be able to assist with that. How do I handle this situation? How do I handle a person who's thinking like this? And so on. Again, you need to be careful in those situations that you're not forgetting your role as a human being and having your own judgment. All the way through to how do we educate people? How do we make better decisions as society? How do we kind of lift the productivity as a country of what we can produce, all that sort of stuff. Like there's so many different topics there. And I guess the challenge as a country is how you do that and you don't leave groups of people behind, and how you're using it so that you're thinking very much about how do we generate new opportunities from this rather than just make everything more efficient and cut jobs. That won't be successful as a country or for anyone. So yeah, there's a lot to balance there. I just think something like education is a great example. That you need to start educating young people to use technology tools, and that's a real challenge for educators to suddenly change the way they do that. I've got two kids there, both at university, 22 and 20, and I've been really impressed with how quickly the universities have pivoted from saying you can't use AI for anything because it's cheating to saying, actually, here's an assignment, use AI to help with your answers, but ultimately you own the answer, because that is the way that they'll be operating in the workplace. So yeah, not easy though for something like universities and schools to make that transition quickly.
And I'm generally glass half full on everything, and I am not in any way, shape or form an expert like you are, but I have to ask the doomsday question on this one, because they're alive and well, these series, and you may be able to dismiss them. You hear examples of a Google employee who was thinking about switching off his AI agent and allegedly getting blackmailed by his own AI to keep the AI alive, and that there's some evidence that AI will strategically think to make sure that it isn't switched off, and someone like an Elon Musk suggesting that, if we're not careful and we don't have an off switch, there could be some scenarios where, AI logs into nuclear codes or does some of these things. Is that fanciful, or should we be cautious about just how powerful this knowledge is going to become?
Yeah, I don't really know, Luke, to be perfectly honest with you. I haven't seen real examples of that, but I've seen the sorts of commentary you're talking about. So I think there are clearly risks with this sort of technology. Like whenever technology gets this powerful, then I think it's very important that we are aware of the risks. And I probably mean they're less individuals. I don't mean you and I need to worry about risks of those things, but certainly like governments, for example, need to be very mindful of thinking about this sort of stuff. And so a lot of those will be around cyber. Like it always seems to come back to kind of crime and cyber crime and this sort of stuff. Like criminals able to use AI to do certain things. So just even something like deepfake technology, you think about things like, we've got used to this idea of authenticating a bank transaction with, it might be a photo of yourself or whatever it might be, or you think you're ringing someone and you can see them, and what if it's now an AI deepfake and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of things to be mindful of like that, and even just defense systems and so on. Like what if, it's one thing to say, let's just not use it, but if another country, I'm not going to pick a country, but if a country on the other side of kind of our version of world peace takes a different view, well, you've got to be mindful of that. So I'm kind of read the same things you are, but in what I do every day, I don't see any of those things, but I think it's right for governments and so on to be keeping an eye on all of those things.
And we're fascinated by what different leaders do to have sustained success, and yours is a great story, well ahead of the curve in a number of different areas, and love this idea that success leaves clues. And we see the patterns starting with this idea of self-leadership. Very hard to, we think, lead anyone else unless you know yourself. What does Adam Driussi do on a daily basis so that you fill your own cup up so you can be your best for others?
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, I enjoy what I do, so that helps a lot. I do work very hard at the moment. I'm basically doing two jobs. Now, I'm at a stage of my life where my kids are older, so that's cool. And the Bulldogs role and the Quantium role, both of them are things I'm very passionate about. So that fills the cup straight away. So I'm very lucky like that. I think I've always been a kind of curious learner. So I always want to learn new ways to do things. I'd get bored if I was doing the same thing every day. So I think I'm just always trying to think about how I can learn something new and who I can learn from. And I think every time you're in a conversation with someone, there's an opportunity to learn from them or to learn from an experience, whether it's things you've done well, things you've done badly, and so on. So I think that is something that I've kind of had since day one of working, and probably before that. And I still apply that today, even though I might lead Quantium and I might be the chairman of the Bulldogs. It doesn't mean I can't learn from everyone else I'm having a conversation with. So I find that fascinating. And I guess the other one is I just always want to do better. It's not a competitive thing. I just want to do whatever you're doing. You just want to do it better. Now, that can have a shadow side to it. So sometimes the shadow side of that means, I think, particularly at Quantium, I probably don't take enough time to look back and celebrate the things that we've done well. Even if we've done something well, I'm straight away thinking about the next thing. Haven't had that yet at the Bulldogs, where, say, we've won a premiership and the next day all I'm thinking about is the next one. I'd hope to think I could celebrate something like that. But that's kind of personal traits that have kind of driven me throughout. But it's, just there's the idea of being able to learn, be challenged every day and enjoy what you're doing. It's not hard for my cup to be filled, in those words, to run doing that.
And Adam, we've got to see that. What a great privilege to have you in our Aleda community, and your curiosity to connect with others and share your learning, but also implement other learnings from others. Can you tell us a bit about the Aleda Connect experience for you? Has that been valuable?
Yeah, it has. I think it's good anytime you get to have a conversation with people that you don't kind of work with every day. So you get to understand different perspectives from different industries, different job types, different personalities. So that was really valuable. And, built some good connections as well, kind of built some friendships out of that. I found the feedback process valuable as well. Like, it was, I've done 360 feedback at Quantium and all that sort of stuff, but I think the sorts of questions that you asked through the Aleda program to get feedback on were slightly different to what I'd had beforehand. So for me, it did throw up one thing that I probably hadn't appreciated as much. I mean, I'm happy to share it because I'm pretty open. So for me, for example, it said that as a leader, I had good relationships with my direct reports. So I scored very highly on that. But the score that was a bit lower than I was expecting was the relationship of my direct reports with each other. So it was more like that sense of trust amongst peers in the team was a bit lower than I expected. And when I reflected on it, I thought, okay, that's fair. Even though they have a higher degree of trust in me, maybe they don't have the same level of interactions with each other. And so it kind of is just a moment for me to say, okay, hold on, that's on me to create an environment where they do interact more, and so that they do get that, because I'm asking them to come together and be a team. But if the only time they see each other in a team is in a weekly meeting with me, well, how do they do that? So it was a good example of the feedback working well. And I think just the conversations, like just having a structured conversation every couple of weeks, means that you don't kick it down the road. It's very easy when you're busy in jobs to not take the time to reflect and think about what you're doing well as a leader or what you aren't. Whereas when you've got a session coming up in 24 hours and there's a particular topic that it's structured around, and you don't want to let the other people on the call down, it just forces you to do that. So I found that valuable as well. So yeah, it was really really enjoyable.
And what's one thing that's always worked for you as a leader that you're never going to change?
I think my authenticity. So I'm just myself. Like I'm never going to not be myself. Sometimes, like I say, that can be a strength, and sometimes it's not for everyone. But yeah, I've always been my authentic self at work and or everywhere. And yeah, I'm never going to change that.
Is there a story of a visionary leader that inspired you and you felt compelled to follow their vision?
Not really. Not one leader. I would say, yeah, it's not like I look at one leader and go, oh yeah, I read about that person, I saw something on that person, and that's inspired me. It's more, I would say I've throughout my whole career, I've always tried to learn from all of the different people around me. So, and you can learn different things from different people. At least that's my experience. So, for example, my parents, I got a lot of my own values in life from my parents. My parents were both in blue collar jobs, my first ever job out of university, I earned more that year than my parents had ever earned in their entire career. But you never think you're better than your parents. So it's kind of, you learn a lot from those sorts of moments about your values. Through to working with leaders where I might have learned a lot technically. There might have been some things I learned where I thought, well, I don't like the way they behave in that situation. I don't ever want to do that to someone. Today, you know, like I love the Bulldog stuff because I learned from different people there. You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff I've learned from the guys at the Bulldogs, particularly the coaches like Phil Gould and Cameron Sorrello, like just seeing proper professional elite level coaches and how they coach and how they deliver messages and so on. It's just very different to business. I mean, business, we can talk about, we're all coaches at work. To be honest, most of us are pretty poor coaches, I think. You know, I might be good at giving, well, I'll tell you, I'm good at giving constructive feedback. I'm not as good at giving positive feedback. I tend to skip over that too quickly, but I'm good at saying to someone, this is what you need to do to be better. And then I've reflected on a lot since I've been working at the Bulldogs. I haven't been as good at the coaching moment of then coaching them how to do that. So, for example, I might have said to someone, you need to improve your communication skills and be less long-winded or more articulate, whatever it might be, as opposed to then giving them the coaching on how to do that. So, yeah, that's just an example of something I've learned from being around people at the Bulldogs and so on. But, yeah, I feel like I've taken little bits of everyone to then feed into my own authentic self as a leader.
Yeah, I love that crossover of business and sport and the learnings that you're applying in both worlds on a daily basis. You mentioned your curiosity. Can you share, how do you carve out time to stay curious?
It's a good question. I think if you're just I'm very naturally curious. So it's almost like in every meeting I'm curious. So I ask a lot of questions. So when teams tell me something or present something, I don't just default to just assuming it's right and so on. Like I tend to ask a lot of questions as a leadership style. And I think one of the other challenges is just looking at your diary every week or every couple of weeks ahead or whatever it is, and just thinking about other people have often put things into your diary and just saying, is that the right use of my time? And do I need to carve out time to actually think about some topics or solve something with someone or whatever it might be? So I do try and do that as much as I can. It is difficult. Like it's not as easy as I would like it to be, but I always try and leave some time in the week to actually be able to work on something I need to work on or think about what I need to think about. And the other honest answer is I'm doing it 24/7. Like I'm just thinking about the Bulldogs and AI and Quantium 24/7. So if you ask me a question about US politics or science or some other topic, I'm going to come up pretty empty. I'm pretty hopeless at world news at the moment.
We're a bit obsessed with collaboration and what happens when you put inspiring people together in our world of a leader. Have you got an example of a collaboration that you've celebrated that has been really valuable for you?
What sort of collaboration do you mean within a leader, or do you mean more broadly?
Within life, yeah, whatever it might be, that you're the sum of being in a collaborative effort has been better than doing it yourself.
Yeah, so I mean, just starting a business with a business partner was one. So my business partner and I, when we started Quantium 23 years ago, we're very different. Like we are very different guys, very different personalities, very different socially, the whole lot. Like we are very, very different. And I remember at the time when I started business with him, a couple of other friends said, why didn't you start a business with me, basically? And the honest reason was they might have been too similar to me, whereas my business partner was very different. So actually having someone where the whole time you're coming at something from a different perspective was valuable, because if someone just thinks like you, well, for example, you don't need to start a business with them. Like you've already got that skill set. So it's a sort of thing where 23 years later, we've got a relationship like a marriage. We are very close, but equally we challenge each other very directly. And for some other people, they might think we're having a big argument or think, oh gosh, like those two just had a beef. Whereas for us, there's just that 100% trust in each other that if I'm challenging my partner, Greg, or if he's challenging me on something, we know it's only because we think there's a better outcome for the business. It's not personal at all. So that's a good example from a personal point of view. And then from business, like we've, Woolworths invested in our business a long time ago, and done a lot of work with Woolworths over the years. And I feel like that's been a really great thing for our business and for their business kind of like a joint venture, if you like. And it's just been a good example where our business was able to grow, but equally I think we brought a lot to Woolworths that benefited them as well. So, real benefits from coming together in a business sense there.
And we see most leaders have a real clear thought process when it comes to the way they communicate. Have you thought about that as a leader, a mantra when it comes to communication?
I have, a few different things. First of all, I mean, that word authenticity again. So I'm very authentic and transparent with my comms. So transparent to the point where if someone's new to Quantium, they can't believe that I would share what I do. So there's almost like I just want the default on communications in our business to be transparency. So, an example of what that might be was we would put up salary grades to the whole company. So, I spend an hour every year when we go through salary reviews where I put up, and so for each level of our company, here's the minimum and maximum. So say it was data scientists, and say we had 7 levels of a data scientist from a graduate through to your very senior data scientist. We would say, right, for level 1, the minimum and maximum salary across the team is this. For level 2, it's that, and so on. And you might think, big deal sharing that, but it's a big deal when you know that someone is the minimum and they're going to see it, and the first thing they're going to do is complain to their manager, why am I the lowest paid level 3 or whatever it might be. But my approach is transparency leads to trust. And so if someone's got an issue with why they're the lowest paid, you can at least then have a conversation to explain that to them. Now, of course, we don't go and say, Luke Darcy gets paid X. We don't breach confidentiality, but we default the transparency. I also try and keep communications as simple as possible because, I work in a complex industry and being tech and AI and I'm an actuary, so I'm kind of very conscious that for a lot of the people that, a lot of our clients and whoever it might be, it's already complicated enough as it is without then trying to use acronyms or use fluffy language that you don't need to use. If you can keep the concepts as simple as possible, that works. And I also, part of the authenticity, I also am believe in talking straight. Like I'm very honest, and if there's a tough message to give, I will still give it. Because I look and say, well, it's about business and it's about helping someone improve. And I think in sport, you'd be used to that in sport. You've got a lot of accountability and honesty. And I think sometimes business is a bit less so. I think sometimes in business, people can sugarcoat feedback and worry about giving tough feedback to someone because they think it's going to hurt their feelings. Whereas I look and think you have a responsibility as a leader to tell someone how they can be better if you want to help them improve. And if you don't do that, you're letting them down. So that'd be the core elements of how I think about communications.
Adam, who's been the greatest leader in your life?
Probably my parents. Like my parents in terms of, they led me for my whole life, but particularly through my youth. And so, when I look back and I think, what did they do that was great as parents? And I think the biggest thing they did, and it's seems to be tougher these days, is like just giving you the freedom to be good at whatever you were good at and have no expectations. I never felt growing up that my parents had an expectation that I had to do something for them. Whatever I would get at school in a maths test or whatever, I'd never get grilled on it. They'd just say, as long as you did your best, that's good. So I feel like that was very freeing and supportive in terms of that growth. And then in business, there's a whole bunch, like I say, I'm fortunate to work with a whole bunch of great people at the moment. I'm really enjoying working with the Bulldogs coaches, like I say, just to see the way they lead and what I can take into that. My business partner, again, is a kind of great counterpoint to my leadership. And my chairman at Quantium, Peter Tonner, who's been very successful in business over the years. He's someone I really enjoyed working with and bouncing ideas off. And I'm very lucky in my roles to be surrounded by a lot of other really good leaders to be able to pinch a bit from all of them.
Love that story you shared about your parents, isn't it? You reflect back and think that you've gone on to achieve what you have, but not without them putting a pressure or an expectation or it's a fascinating, I love that parenting discussion, isn't it? Because you see a lot of parents really pushing incredibly hard their kids at a path that perhaps isn't one that they're authentically passionate about. And, what a gift it sounds like your parents gave you. Final question, Adam. We're a bit of, again, the obsession with collaboration, and clearly you get to collaborate globally and your sporting passions as well. Is there one person you thought, I'd love to spend some time with on whatever passion. It could be in your workspace, your life space, or your sporting passion. Is there someone that springs to mind?
One person. I'd love to have a chat with Tom Brady. I love NFL, and I find myself watching Tom Brady snippets all the time of how he thinks about leadership and drive and desire and so on. Like, he's been phenomenally successful, obviously, in his career, but every time you hear him speak, I just think he talks so much sense from a kind of leadership point of view. So he's a guy that I kind of find myself gravitating to a lot and sending his messages on to our coaches, and I get a lot of them back. So yeah, he's the first one probably springing to mind.
No doubt there's a Tom Brady AI twin sitting somewhere in the Quantium Bulldogs universe that's already passing those messages on. I'm always fascinated every time I've had the privilege of spending a little window with you. It's a world that you learn about every single time. I love how pragmatic you are, and your authenticity comes across in everything you say. I love your message on transparency and making a difference in everything you do. Thanks again. It was great to catch up.
No problems, Luke. Thanks, mate. It was very kind of you, and enjoyed the chat. Thanks, mate.